This Monday and Tuesday, the playoffs of the World Championship in Trackmania will take place in Paris, France. After a little break in 2017, we are once again ready to crown a world champion, and this time might be even the highest level we've ever seen at a Trackmania event. I'm joined by one of the guys who will cast this and provide the footage to you. So let's see what he thinks about it. Is it really that hype that everybody thinks it is? Riolu, how are you feeling now? We are some days away from the event.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm feeling very excited, actually, since you already said it. It's been quite a long break since the last World Cup, and I think this year is gonna be especially amazing. We have so many talented players. We have so many fast people that improved so much over the last months and years, of course. So the level is incredibly high, and that is already one reason why I'm hyped up. The second reason, of course, me being kind of like having a first with casting a World Cup. So for me, it's like a first-time experience as well. Never done that before. So it's kind of the biggest thing that I will cast so far. So that is also kind of exciting as well.
If you look at 2018 separately, just this event, do you think that it actually helped that we didn't have a world championship in 2017? People are more prepared for this and people are actually more hyped because we had a break.
Don't it's quite hard to answer because well, we had the Trackmania Worlds, like the Mania Planet World Cup last year, which was comparable. It wasn't quite the same, but it was still kind of there, like low-key, you know? So, I don't know. I don't think it had a big impact on the fact that everyone is hyped up. I think the reason is rather that the organization and the professionalism is really, really high this year. So I think that is like the main reason why Trackmania World Cup is so big this year.
If you're talking about the Manipulate World Cup, it took place in 2016, but yeah, I guess that's easy to misunderstand. But can you tell us, how do you prepare for this World Championship as a caster? Is it just simply showing up at the stream and then take it, just wing it and take it as it goes? Or do you actually prepare to look into the player's history at earlier World Championships?
I think it's definitely important to also show that sort of professionalism as a caster. So yeah, I will definitely take some notes, prepare a couple of things here and there for each player so I can actually go a little into detail for every player, because I think that is going to be very important to have also for, let's say, people that are like not into Trackmania, that maybe watch Trackmania for the first time at the World Championship. So I kind of want to provide a full-on experience and a nice, you know, a nice overview over what's happening everywhere. So I think a little bit of preparation will definitely be needed. And yeah, other than that, of course, go with the flow. You know, it shouldn't be like super scripted. Everything has to be kind of, you know, coming out of yourself without really planning everything up ahead, because that's also kind of awkward if things don't really go the way you want it to go. Then you're just finding yourself being like, you know? So that's also kind of bad. So you need to be very spontaneous, of course. That's something that you need to have as a caster, but of course with the proper knowledge in the background. So I will definitely work towards that.
When I talk to people who has attended to the event, they speak about this sort of with a special feeling. What is your feeling about the earlier days of the World Championship? Is this event a special event for you as well, even though you haven't attended to it?
I would say yes, definitely, because this is like the first year where the World Championship is actually, you know, being ran by community members. The last times it was always like official, you know, in brackets, official by ESWC. And now it is actually being ran by Softy, by a guy from the community, with the help of other community members. So I would definitely say this year is a very special one, and probably even the best one. So yeah, I would say this is special. Also for me, as someone who was just spectating, not playing myself, of course, but just from observing everything, observing what has been happening, how everything has been evolving over the last months, it's definitely a special one.
You've been part of Trackmania for a long time. Can you actually tell us what does it really mean to have a World Championship? Because we want to be recognized as an esport game.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. Being recognized as an esport is incredibly important, and I think that's what Trackmania was kind of missing out on in the last years. So I find it really good that Softy and of course everybody that is involved is actually taking the initiative to bring Trackmania forward as an esport, try to make something happen, start from scratch, make something good happen. So it means a lot to have it back for the players, for the competition, for Trackmania as a whole, as a franchise, as an esport title, as a potential esport title in the future as well. So there's a lot that is bound with this Trackmania World Cup this year. It will kind of determine how it will, continue in the next years. And I think with the pace that we're showing now, I am very, very confident that it can become a bigger thing, and potentially reach out to even more players in the next year. So that's of course the goal that Softy is also aiming for. And I really, really hope that it's actually gonna be a thing, like become bigger and bigger and bigger, and at some point reach like, the big scenes. It's of course very optimistic way of thinking, but we can only try our best and see where the wind blows us, I guess.
During the group stages of this event, you had a lot of casters trying it out. What does it mean for you to actually be the one who is, I don't know, getting the support to be viewed as the best one and getting the chance at the biggest stage in Trackmania?
Yeah, it's definitely nice. Like, to start off, of course, it was really good to have a different set of casters in the beginning of the group stage, because we had a lot of matches. That is like something that everybody was complaining about, that the Trackmania World Cup just has been running for too long. It has been exhausting for the casters, for the organizers, for the players, for everybody. So that is, of course, one thing that needs to improve in future editions of the World Cup. But to come back to the casting thing, first of all, thanks for the nice words, and of course, it's really nice to have the opportunity to cast the grand final, and of course to give the coverage to this event that could potentially become bigger in the future. So you're kind of making the baby steps together with the other casters, which is kind of cool to think about. And yeah, of course, the variety that the different casters have brought to the cast as well. That is really nice, because everybody has kind of his own persona, everybody is different, everybody's casting in a different way. That's also really cool to have. So I hope that will stay. But other things might need a little change. For example, the format. That definitely needs some rework.
If you talk about the casters, many people try this for the first time, I believe. Is there anyone you would say surprised you as a caster and might have a big future inside of casting Trackmania?
I mean, there were like a lot of players that have casted already, and a few that maybe didn't do a lot. For example, the German streamers, Nutella and Chaos Hand, they mostly did German casts, and it's been like one of the first times that I personally listened to them in English, and I think they actually did a really good job. So they personally surprised me a lot with their, of course, different style of casting, but I think it was very nice to follow because they also brought a little bit of knowledge into it. So I think those two were a very nice surprise. Next to, of course, the people that have been around a little more, R2K, Scotsman, and everyone else, even Spam, of course. It was very fun to cast with Spam, of course. So yeah, that was really cool. So my shoutouts, I think, would go to my German guys.
If you talk about the group stages, you said it lasted for a long time, but if you have to look at the players and the results we got from them, is there any surprises coming out of the group stages?
Not a lot, actually. Many players that were in the groups, they, the players that you immediately think of, they made it, of course, because they are experienced and they know what they're doing. They're fast, they're good, they're consistent. So I wouldn't say there's a big surprise, but of course, there are some things that I find a little awkward. For example, the fact that Ringoa and Dexter have been disqualified. That is something I personally haven't seen coming. So they have been replaced by some other players later on, which is of course nice because it gives opportunities to players that actually want to compete. But yeah, then again, it was quite a surprise, especially for Dexter, in my opinion, because he's, I think, a great contender. He could have been a great contender, but he got disqualified at the end, which is a little bit of a shame. So I would say that's a little bit of a surprise. But other than that, in terms of performance, I think everybody that I expected to go through went through at the end.
So do you are not left with a feeling that one guy who could have done well at the World Championship is missing out?
The only thing I could think of right now would be Serbi, but I can just assume that Serbi just wasn't really motivated since he has no team, and it was kind of just not the right situation for him. So Serbi would certainly be someone that could have done better, but it didn't go well for him. So that's maybe the only surprise that I would like think of right now. But other than that, no, not at all.
If you look at the players qualified for the event, who would you say looked the best in the group stage? Is it someone like Yo-Yo who has found the form back and is looking almost better than ever, or is it Carl Jr., Pack, and Massa?
Of course, you mentioned a good point. Yo-Yo was actually a really, really good surprise. Yo-Yo has been showing a really, really good performance in the group stage and throughout the whole tournament, pretty much. So Yo-Yo was looking incredibly good, alongside with the big names, Pack and Carl Jr., that always played well, of course. And also, there's one name that I haven't really came across before the Trackmania World Cup, and that is Mathix. Mathix, the Dutch player that is now with Sampi, he played really, really good, actually, considering that he wasn't he wasn't part of the competitive tech scene for like super, super long. He did really, really good, actually. So kind of sad in my eyes that Mathix didn't make it all the way through the LAN event, because he had plenty of chances and they all didn't work out in his favor, which is very unfortunate. So yeah, I think he deserves a little bit of a special shout out right here.
Yeah, I believe after stage 1 of the group stage, when he qualified, I even said congratulations, see you in Paris, because he looked so good and so strong. But then eventually I guess I jinxed him some bit.
Oh boy, do you feel bad?
A little bit, a little bit. But you talk about the qualifiers. We had 14 slots giving out in group stages, and then the 2 last spots in the open qualifiers, the 7th and the 14th of October. Who would you say looked the best in the qualifiers, and are you surprised that Egger and Kappa are the ones qualifying?
First of all, to cover the second part of the question about Kappa and Egger, Kappa, definitely no surprise. He had the potential, and I find it really cool that he actually came back to, join the competition together with the other players. So Kappa was a name that I initially missed, and he actually made it in the end through the open qualifiers, which is really cool. So Kappa, definitely not a surprising name. I saw that Kappa is going to compete, and I was like, yeah, Kappa's going to make it. I think that Egger was a really good surprise. Egger that also, he's not considered like the fastest or anything, and he also wasn't around for super long. So I am personally really happy for Egger as well that he made it through, because he put a lot of effort into practicing and he never gave up, and he has shown the biggest nerves in the open qualifier that he won. So Egger definitely going into the playoffs as an underdog, but he did really good as well. So that's really nice.
I talked to Kappa during the weeks when he trained, and he said that missing out on the first qualifier even motivated him more, and now he's better than ever. So do you think actually not qualifying in the first group stage, or first open qualifier, sorry, even helped the Kappa getting the sort of form back?
I think so, yes, definitely. Because Kappa knows that he can do better, and if he has to deal with a defeat, he's probably the type of person that is going to be like, yeah, okay, I need to improve. I need to go back to the drawing table and actually improve for the second qualifier, because I want to make it through. So I think that kind of opened up his eyes that the practice that he put in for the first open qualifier wasn't enough. It simply wasn't enough. So I think that was a good motivation, and he certainly benefited from that as well. So for a player like Kappa, it was good. For another player, it could have gone the completely other direction. So Kappa, definitely the type of player, of course, very experienced, online, offline, everywhere. He has been around for super long, so he knows how to prepare for such a situation, and he did it really well. So yeah, definitely a beneficial situation for him, I would say.
I don't want to talk too much about Kappa and make this a special episode about him, but he's sort of an outstanding person in the way that he's the only one who didn't play the group stages, and it's the guy who has had the shortest time playing the maps. But do you think that that could actually be a benefit for him, because now all the maps are sort of new instead of old, and yeah, I've driven them for so long time, I don't need to change them, while he has the view of I need to know life these tracks equally and still be motivated on each and every track.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up there because, as I said earlier, the format, like the whole process of picking players that are going to qualify for the playoffs, has been way too long. So many players find themselves in the situation where they can't really see the tracks anymore. They're like fed up with the tracks, and they are in a state of being overtrained. So the fact that Kappa didn't really play the group stages and didn't really have a lot of contact with the maps themselves, I think that is going to put him in a good situation. He's going to go into it with the freshest mind, probably, compared to the other players that have been sitting on the same maps for months. So it could be a good, a good thing for Kappa if he makes good use of it. Of course, all of the other players are really, really trained, so he also needs to put the time into practicing. But he is at least not going to run into the situation of being overtrained. He's not going to be in a situation where he's going to be like, oh, not again Hervanta. Oh, not again this one, So that could definitely be a good thing for him as he goes into the playoff phase.
Yeah, let's talk about the playoffs that takes place the 29th and the 30th of October, the Monday and Tuesday coming up. It starts at 10 o'clock on Monday, I believe. Looking at the favorites, who would you say are the favorites, and are there a certain amount of groups in that sort of favorite group one?
If I were to pick who's going to go into the grand final, I would, of course, it is a very, let's say, generic opinion, but I would say Carl Jr., Pack, Tween, and a fourth one. The fourth one is going to be, it could be anyone almost. So that's the cool thing about it. Everybody is probably able to take that fourth place. So that one could be a surprise. Next to the three that I mentioned that, of course, have the biggest chances. Tween has been playing like an absolute madman, together with, of course, Carl Jr. and Peck that are really, really good. But yeah, for the fourth guy, there are so many people that I could think of right now that could possibly take it. So that is going to be up for grabs, I think. Of course, you have people like Masa, you have Bren, you have Kappa, you have Spam, you have Roa, you have Kronos, Yo-Yo, so many people that could probably take it. So I couldn't actually decide who's going to take fourth. For many players, I think the daily form is going to be very decisive. The way you feel Monday and Tuesday is going to be the decisive factor for many players. So if somebody, steps out of the bed with the wrong leg, he's going to feel like, maybe not today. It's going to bode well for, or not bode well for him. So for many players, it will highly depend on how the matches go, how they personally feel, and make the best out of it.
But can you actually tell us what is the difference between playing one day and then you have a sort of a break and a night to sleep on it and then play a new one? Because as you saw Dutchy at Giant Cup 2018, he looked maybe one of the best at the Saturday, but then the Sunday came along and he lost the two matches he played and then was out. How much does it affect that you cannot continue just playing in the zone and you have to have a break and sleep on it and then show up the next morning?
Yeah, that's indeed something that could be beneficial for the one player and terribly bad for the other player. Because, of course, you have that break. And imagine you're playing that tournament, like the first half of the tournament. Then you go to bed. And, of course, you're not just going to fall asleep. You're going to think about, hey, tomorrow I got to focus. Tomorrow I got to play good. Tomorrow it's going to be do or die. So for some players, it might be a motivation. For others, it's going to destroy them. And that could probably be what happened to Dutchy, of course. But the break is definitely going to be a decisive factor for the players as well. So, yeah, I think for some players it's going to turn to the better, for some maybe to the worse. So, yeah, let's see about that.
Do you have any names in mind that you think will actually benefit from having, let's say, playing on the big stage that will return now in Trackmania? Is anybody better when the pressure is on and all eyes on them?
I think I'm safe to say that the players that do have LAN experience or on big stages, they will definitely be in an advantage, of course. So people like Carl Jr. that have been playing, World Cups, the Raider Cups in front of like 20,000 people, they probably will handle it better than some others. So that is going to be a great advantage. But I can also imagine that the players that maybe don't have a lot of experience with that will also benefit from that, because they're going to go into it being like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, nice. So I'm just going to play now." You know, they're not going to go into it with big expectations. They're just trying to focus on their game. So maybe just going into it without a lot of expectations and with an empty mind would also be very good. So that could be something that I could maybe apply to the underdogs. For example, Egger that has never been in a situation like this. He's young. He's not very experienced. So he could also be one of the people that could maybe benefit from that situation because he just doesn't know it. So he could just find himself in a situation of pure focus, of completely being in the zone, or he's just going to be like, "Oh my god, this is too much for me." But yeah, it will really depend, of course. As I said, the way you feel at that day is going to determine a lot.
You talk about people having experience. Two of the favorites you said are Carl Jr. and Tween. They have 5 grand finals each and are surely used to being on the biggest stage. We talk about Carl Jr. as the best ever, but what would a win for Tween mean here? Is it then top 5 of all time, or is it even top 3 then?
I would definitely say that Tween is in the top 5 because he has been showing up in every sort of big tournament with a really, really good performance. So just that fact already makes Tween a really, really successful player. But the other thing is what he actually told you in that interview. I watched it. And he told you that it's going to be a very good motivation to be with Sampi, to kind of start a new chapter of his career with Sampi after being at Nesuba for 5 decades. So I think if Tween does well, he's going to be especially happy about it because the way he played at Giant Cup was also really good, so that's going to be a great confidence boost. But doing a great performance at the actual World Cup would be probably the best moment of his life. So Tween, definitely rooting for him.
Yeah, we are talking about the player who has finished second 3 times and third 2 times. But we also have 3 world championships, or 3 world champions, or former world champions, sorry. We have Carl Jr., we have the defending champion Pac, and we also have Spam. What do you think we can expect from a guy like Spam, who won in 2012 and has been in 4 grand finals? Can he find sort of his old form back, and is this big stage an advantage for him? Because I think when he performs the best is when he's under the most amount of pressure. Do you agree with that?
I would say yes, because Spam, as you said, is full of experience, and I think being under pressure could work out very well for him. And also to add something to that, he also hasn't been on a like super big stage for quite a while, so it's going to be a nice experience for him as well to just have it again and see how he's going to perform. We of course know that Spam isn't the fastest compared to players like Massa, Pac, Carl Jr., and so on. So Spam definitely not the fastest, but he can at least shine through with consistency and, you know, actually being capitalizing on mistakes from other players. So he could do well. In previous tournaments, we saw that he did, let's say, okay, but definitely with room for improvement. So maybe the Trackmania World Championship with these surroundings, with this, you know, complete environment, could be good for him.
You are going to be the commentator, and therefore people view you as a guy with a lot of knowledge about the players and the sort of scene in Trackmania. If you have to pick one guy who's going to be the dark horse, who's going to be the underdog and surprise people, who is that guy?
Either Egger or Danik B, definitely. Because, as I said, Egger is has been going into this as the underdog, and he actually made it through. So he will remain the underdog in the playoffs, obviously. Same goes for Danik B. Danik B, who even doesn't have a team. He's the only player that goes into this without a team backing him up. So he's definitely going to be the underdog as well, considering what he did in the past. So those two players definitely going to be the ones that personally surprised me, of course, and players that I am very happy about that they made it through to the playoffs. But if you compare them to big names that I don't think I need to mention again, they definitely will be the underdogs in this tournament.
We are saying that we start on Monday the 29th at 10 a.m. But it's not like we have an easy start. We go straight into hard matches. We have the quarterfinals coming up. Is there any match that you look at the moment that is maybe the death group or the death match that is going to be the hardest match?
I think match 2 with Tween, Spam, Kappa, and Danik B is going to be incredibly close because we have Tween, of course, that has been very fast together with Kappa. Then we have someone like Spam, who is definitely going to capitalize from mistakes of those said names, and Danik B. So Danik B, who can also be up for a surprise, which means that that outcome of that match is going to be like impossible to call right now. While we have other matches where I think it's going to be a little more clear to see who's going to make it through. So I think match 2 right now is going to be very, very tough, together with maybe match 4 with Masa, Dachi, Omnipots, and Cap. Because we have players like Masa that we all know he can be fast, but he can tilt as well. Then we have Dachi, consistent, reliable, so he could potentially make it through together with Omnipots, even though Omnipots has shown some weaknesses in the previous matches that he played. So there were also matches that he didn't do good in. And same applies to Cap, pretty much. So that is also going to be very, very close to call. Will highly depend on how the players will feel at 11:15 in the morning. So that's also going to be another factor that will not be easy to cope with because it's just so early and normally you don't, you're not forced to perform like on your top level at 11:15 in the morning. So that's also going to be one thing. But yeah, I think match 2 and match 4 are going to be very close to call right here.
If you play with the idea of some matches playing out in that scenario, match 5 might look like a banger. If Carl Jr. wins his match, he goes into the match 5. If Pac wins his match, he goes into map 5. If Tween gets second in his match, he goes into match 5. And if Masa plays second in his match, he goes into match 5. So we might end up with a sort of a grand final already in the semi-final. What does that tell you about the level we have at the World Championship?
I mean, it's just obvious that the level that we have this year is just absolutely amazing. If 4 players meet, potentially, of course, in the semi-final that are all world champion candidates, then you know that shit's going to go down. You know that everybody is able to take it, and that's just really making it even more exciting. And that's, of course, what I'm hoping for as a caster, and what the viewers are also going to hope for, because it would be boring if, the favorites are just going to make it through, clean sweep all their matches, and go to the grand final. Like, that's boring. So actually having a potential map 5 that is not even, that unlikely to happen, I think we have big chances that we could see a very similar matchup like that, at least. The fact that that can happen is already really amazing. So match 5 is going to be a banger, definitely. So it's really boding well for an amazing playoff phase.
Can you tell us where do we follow these playoffs and at what time should people tune in?
I don't have exact information for myself yet, but as you said, the matches are going to start at 10:15. So Twitch TV/TrackmaniaWC will be the channel where everything will be covered in the English language, together with R2K, most likely. There's also going to be another French stream. I'm not sure who's in charge of that. I think it's Wrapped and Aura, if I remember correctly. Also 2 very old school casters in the French Trackmania esports scene. So also very nice to have them back. But yeah, Trackmania WC, probably the stream will go live shortly before 10 a.m. If there are no delays on stage, of course, like at the actual event, which could also very well happen because it's kind of the curse in Trackmania lands that there's going to be a delay. But yeah, roughly 10 a.m. you can probably expect the stream to go live with a little bit of, pre-match coverage, with a little bit of chit-chat about the players, about what's going to happen. So yeah, that's going to be the rough time where you need to set your alarm to wake up with a coffee and enjoy the matches.
Thank you so much for stepping up. We were supposed to be both you and R2K here, but you took everything alone because he didn't respond. But do you have any final words about the World Championship?
Yeah, I would like to thank Softy and everybody that is involved in the Trackmania World Cup for actually making it happen, because I think that's the best thing that happened to Trackmania eSport in a while. So a big shout outs and a big thank you for putting up the effort and the initiative into making Trackmania a better a better esport title, because I think that deserved it. Trackmania has potential, and in the past years, that potential hasn't really been woken up, to say the least. So yeah, big shout outs to everybody that made it happen, and let's make it a good one.
Thank you so much for stepping up and doing this, and good luck with the cast. For people at home, you can follow me doing interviews on the YouTube page, and I will also show some footage from inside the event, because the Monday will, as far as I know, not be open to public. But if you want to see how the players play there and how the environments looks like, I will show that on Twitter, so you at least get some sort of feeling. Riolu, thanks so much for doing this, and again, good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.